Hi, Sandi Star Wellness. Hey, listen, I wanted to share my next webinar, which is going to be on de-stress, like tools to de-stress. I think it's really important to do that. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen if it will let me. There we go. It was giving me a little nonsense a minute ago. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, let me try this again. I'm seeing on my screen here. Okay. All right. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to, from the beginning, let's go. All right. So, Sandi Star Wellness, really wanting to get into addressing stress. So there's a lot of stressors in our life right now. Has been a lot more than well, I'd say, you know, what's going on, right? In the last few years, it's been a little nuts. But we also have many stressors in our life. We have to deal with, you know, but there's ways that the body deals with stress and the way that the body can actually be affected by stress. So that's what I want to talk about today. What I want to do is share and be vulnerable here because I feel that, you know what, we've all been through hell and we've gotten through it. We have the ability to get through it. And so some of the stressors in my life that I can highlight here, unstable childhood, just a lot of abandonment, fear, just a lot of things happened in my childhood that they really set me up to be a very confused and angry teenager. So, you know, my best friend killed himself in front of me, shot himself in the head in front of me when I was 16. And that was quite an eye opener, right? After pointing the gun at me, I don't know really what to say about this, except, wow, okay, that threw me in for a loop. Went through that by myself, never got counseling. And I would suggest if you have traumas like that, that you get somebody you can really talk to. I felt very isolated, confused, and scared. That was a very scary time. And again, what a stress, right? I also had health issues literally from the time I was born, with heart issues and then on, right? Ended up with, and when I share this a lot in my business, because, you know, I get it when you're going through migraines, when you're going through hormonal things, when you're going through, you know, early hysterectomies, I've been there, when you're going through IBS and GI stuff, when you're going through you name it, right? Autoimmune is a big one. So really serious health issues, you know, a couple of them life-threatening. And it also is quite a stressor on you in all areas, right? I actually was in abusive relationships as well. Very serious. I did get away from those. And I will say, wow, you know, you look back and you think, what were you thinking? You know, but what I would say is, you know, we sometimes look back and say, how on earth did that happen? But it happened. And so you don't look back and live that again, but you know that I am strong. I got through that. I survived. Divorces, obviously, with things that have happened. My brother was murdered when he was 32, which put me in my mid 20s. And that was quite a trauma, a stressor, in that, you know, it took a year to find the guy who did it. He was executed, shot 6 times in the head, and thrown on the street and left. And going through that with the trials and with my mom, it was her and I, like, against this monster, and quite an ordeal for a few years. That became such a chronic stress, and I saw what it did to my mom, and it was devastating. And then going through 20 years, him in prison, and then going through the trials and all of that, but also going through parole hearings where I would go in Folsom Prison I did this probably 3 times, and having to sit in a room with him and just fight for my brother. But then I realized I've got to move on and forgive him. And I did. And I got to tell you, on the other side of this, I know what it feels like to forgive. And that is the most empowering thing. There was a lot of stuff around this whole situation. And I'm not going to go into that. But what I will say is that affected my family a lot. And, but we got through it. And then my father, 4 years later, he was in surgery for throat cancer and he never woke up. There was some history with that as well, with strokes and alcoholism and all of that. So he literally had a very broken down system from a lot of stressors in his life. And ultimately that basically took him. That was a stress on me. And all of those happened literally by the time I was 30. And so it was kind of nonstop for a long time. And then, you know, my mom's death was a very big stressor for me. That was so hard to go through because we were so close. So these are stressors, right? These are major stressful events in my life. And I'm sure, you know, you've gone through a lot yourself. And there, you know, there's really no way to say why or, you know, question things. We just move on and get through it, and we become stronger, and we can empathize with other people, and we can be compassionate and better people. And there's people that come out of these things that really have a coaching business or a book or something that they are creating that can help others even avoid some of these things. And so for me, it's definitely really working on health and wellness. And again, mindset, triggers, traumas that can make a big difference in healing. So with that being said, there's a lot of common effects of stress, right? There's on our body, we can have physical things. I know for a fact there's emotions tied to organ systems. Fear is liver, grief is lungs, and so on. And we also have things like headaches. I had migraines for so many years. It was crazy. I know part of that, though, was cow dairy and gluten, but I also know a lot of it was stress that triggered that, including GI stuff that can be really triggered from stress. A lot of the GI stuff, fatigue, you know, people having anxiety, chest pains. Your mood can be affected greatly. Depression is huge right now. Anxiety is over the top right now. And so we really have to understand, okay, this is where I'm at, now what, you know? But understanding of these happen. These are things that happen when we go through stress. But it's how we handle it too, and how we allow it to, or where we allow it to go. In other words, okay, that's it. I've got to get this, you know, in line. I got to get balance again, rather than going to the behavioral part where you start, you know, smoking and drinking too much, or getting angry at everybody, or, you know, your diet's a mess and you're not exercising. These are the behavioral responses to a stress. And so we can change those, right? And so that's a big part of really working with somebody that understands this, because this is really part of coaching that you need when you're working with a practitioner. You don't want somebody who's just going to tell you what to eat. You want somebody that's going to really get deep with you and get into those roots. So this is all the areas that can be affected, as you know. And it can affect everything around us, our job. It can affect our finances. It can affect just our, you know, social, like we're not, you know, wanting to go see anybody or hang out, or, you know, we're mean to somebody we live with, things like that. So it definitely can affect sleep, our ability to be actually relaxed, right? Or even laugh sometimes. So that's a really big one to understand. And so in the body, we look at burnout, right? So, and I'd say with COVID and the last like 18 months, you know, a lot of people are in exhaustion because they are just so overloaded. They're tired. They're, you know, physically exhausted. And so there are stages of burnout that we want to be aware of, and we really want to catch it when you're on stress overload and start doing things to really stop you from going into physical fatigue, into burnout, exhaustion, right? So this is a very big thing right now that's going on. And so what happens is there's a hormone called cortisol. Most of us know, gosh, it makes you fat. Well, yeah, it increases and elevates and stays chronically that way. It's going to make too much glucose. Too much glucose gets stored in your fat cells and you gain fat, okay? But there's a good thing about cortisol. It is meant to help you deal with stress. It's meant to be triggered and increase glucose right away so you can think when there's a stress coming on. It really helps your body, your muscles move. It releases the energy away from your core out into your extremities. You can run, you can fight, whatever you need to do, right? Like in the old days when they'd run from a bear or whatever and get in that cave, right? And then the body would calm down and they'd be fine. So when you're chronically in that state, though, it gets a little crazy. But you know, the good thing about cortisol is it does really convert amino acids to glucose. It does good things. It helps with glucose storage and glucose balance. Okay. It's also important to know that it really helps with maintaining blood volume and blood pressure, right? So stress, obviously, we know can affect blood pressure because what's happening is you're losing, you know, sodium in the urine. And so it just is a domino effect, right? It also protects you from infections, traumas, things like that. It really helps balance that body to adapt to a stressor. That's the biggest thing to remember about cortisol. And the good thing about it also helps maintain mood and stability. But again, like I said, when imbalance occurs, it really affects that glucose. It's not a good thing. And so we definitely like to do the glucose, look at glucose and make sure that's balanced, right? Cortisol is a really good lab to do. It's actually a saliva test. You do it 4 times a day. It's called a four-point saliva test, hormone test. It's also good to test like DHEA also with that. So again, it can increase blood sugar levels. Chronically, that is not a good thing. We see a lot of people dealing with diabetes, pre-diabetes. You know, your pancreas cannot actually convert. I mean, it just becomes this, again, issue that's been chronic and imbalanced. So again, it can affect your proteins. You can literally get muscle atrophy. You end up carrying way too much more fat than you do muscle, which is not a good thing either. And that has a lot to do with cortisol. Your lymphatic tissue can shrink. That is your like detoxer, you know, that's like really important to get things moving through the body, is your lymphatic system. And a lot of times people get that it gets stagnated in the body, and that's not a good thing either. It does not really drain on its own either, the lymphatic system. And so exercise is important, trampolines, there's certain things you can do, dry brushing to help get movement. That's a whole nother topic. But anyway, that is affected by cortisol. And then the other thing, it will decrease your antibody production. And so that again is your immune system. And that again, you don't want a decrease in that. And again, that is tied into cortisol imbalance. And so what can we do to de-stress? Well, for me, this is my list. I mean, I eat, you know, as much as you can, eat a well-balanced whole food diet. I eat mostly organic, absolutely on my meat proteins, animal proteins, wild caught fish, organic vegetables. You can go by the Dirty Dozen, Clean 15, ewg.org is a great resource. Know your numbers, like really important to know what your blood pressure looks like, what your cholesterol numbers look like, what your normal labs look like, your baseline labs, your blood sugar, your A1C, your glucose, your D3 is important, has a lot to do with immune health, D3 is also critical. Calcium can't even get in the bone without D3. And D3 doesn't get into the cells really well without K2. And so again, we're talking, you got to have that balance. You got to kind of know what you're doing with supplements and how you're taking them and the quality. So water is critical. Drink half your ideal body weight in ounces a day of good, clean water. Clean water, not bottled water. And definitely try not to drink out of a plastic bottle. That's very estrogenic and it's just not healthy. Just get a good glass, bottle or drinking cup that's not plastic. And the other thing too is exercise, stay active, and that doesn't mean you have to go do jazzercise every day or get crazy on it. I did that in my 20s and that was great in my 20s, but not now. My 50s are a lot different than my 20s, but I do some good walks, good hills, resistance, things like that. Super important. Just staying active, getting sweating and just movement and get the heart rate up and get that, breathing going, that type of thing is so, so important. Going for a walk alone can make a huge difference. And sometimes that's the best place to start, right? The other thing is really important is meditation and prayer and setting aside time for that, right? For me, first 30 minutes in the morning is my prayer time, where I just set my intentions. I read the good word. I read affirmations. I just read really positive things that allow me to have a good, strong foundation and really be who God says I am, right? Not the self-talk. That's the next one. The self-talk needs to be positive, right? So those all tie together. It's just really being aware and really loving yourself. And really speaking positive things into yourself. Some people actually talk really well and are so sweet to other people, but they're so mean to themselves. And that is so unhealthy to do that. And so I know it's a process, and I know a lot of that can come from childhood traumas and things, but you know what? We can get through this. We can absolutely get through this. I do a gratitude journal. Every night I write 3 things I'm grateful for. They can be the littlest of things or a big thing. And it's yours. It's your personal, journal. It's your personal gratitude. I'm at about 350 now. I got a cool journal and my goal is 1,000. And it actually came from a Bible study a friend did that was called 1,000 Gifts. And I, picked that journal back up again, and I'm continuing. And I think it's just really awesome. It could be a couple words, a sentence, a paragraph. Again, it's just being grateful. I have my patients do journaling. I think it's important to also do gratitude in that. Relationships, I've been there, done that with really bad relationships, extremely toxic, dangerous, but I've also got really good ones now and really blessed. And there's a huge difference. It's, being around people that are going to uplift you, support you, talk truth into you, and not have drama, right? So I know as we get older, we don't put up with that as much, but at any age, you can just decide, I don't want to do drama, because that's so negative on a relationship. So also being creative, like, we're coming up it's September now, we're coming up into, the fall, and that's when I start getting that itch to start like crafting and things like that. But being creative could even be in a business. You can find creative ways. Like I have a background in marketing as well, and it's fun, and I get really creative in that. And I think that really helps balance my brain, because I'm also very logical. And with what I do, it's science, and it's, biochemistry, and it's things that are, you have to think a lot. And then there's that creative side that gives you like, oh, this is cool. I can just, get into this for a while. So again, being creative, people have music, pick up an instrument, something that's going to allow you to be creative. It's very healing to do that. And again, keep a sense of humor on hand. That is so important, to have like a good sense of humor, find humor in things. When you go through so much in like a long period of time, I know like I did, it just got so exhausting that you can't help but laugh and say, seriously. My mom has such a great way of she has such a good sense of humor, love people, love to party and just be around people. And she was so awesome that way. And I think the sense of humor sure made a difference in her life, because she didn't have a very fabulous life either, right? So anyway, so that is really important, is having a sense of humor. And then again, we either respond or we react, and there is a big difference, and you'll know it, right? I know when I've reacted to something versus responding, and it's very different. So we have control over that, right? And then lastly, really faith over fear. I have been living in faith over fear for especially the last year and a half, because if you live in fear, then you're going to be controlled by a dark presence, as opposed to faith, which is giving you hope and control, right? So big difference too, faith over fear. That has been my hashtag for the last year and a half, and one of them actually, but faith over fear is super, super important. So some of the supplements that you could look at for stress is a multivitamin, a really good multivitamin, good baseline anyway, especially if we're trying to dial in the diet. That's number one. But also, we can't eat as much to really fulfill what our body needs and nutrients, because the soil is so depleted and used over and over without giving it time to regenerate those amazing bacteria and balance that bring those nutrients into the foods. And so a good multi is good for that. B complex is one of the most important things for not only stress, but for protein synthesis. I mean, B vitamins you need them for GI health. I mean, they're so important for so many things. Energy, right? And I do a good B complex, and I do a folate with B12. That's a whole nother topic, but do folate, don't ever do folic acid. Folic acid is synthetic and it's just not recommended. Folate is way and it's natural. Probiotic, definitely for the immune system. I've got some great ones. They're live spore. They're awesome. And I take those. Every once in a while, I'll do a very high strain, like a medicinal strength, to give my system a boost. Melatonin is actually really important for the circadian rhythm. And sometimes we can be deficient in that. It's also good, and it's actually manufactured in the gut. And so if we have gut issues, we might very well need to do some melatonin. And so you can start at a low dose. I take it every night. And so melatonin, so, getting sleep, again, that's critical. So melatonin can actually help just calm things. And then get that circadian rhythm. That's so important, right? This can be helpful for that. So on B vitamins, this is just a study that was done that just proves again that B can really help with stress symptoms, some being anger, fatigue, depression, right? Super important supplement. Very inexpensive too, right? Very inexpensive. So again, this was a PubMed source. This was a study that was done 12 weeks on 60 people. And they had some really good results. The other thing too I wanted to mention here is it also protects you, right, from heart disease, dementia, and colon cancer, or that, that kind of stuff. So that's, again, another reason, right? We don't want to do anything that's going to increase our risk for anything like that. So today's a gift, and you get to choose, and choose to have a prosperous life. We get that choice, and I know it's easier said than done, especially when you're going through so much heaviness that you don't even see a light. But just know there's definitely a light, and there's people you could bring around you that can really help get you through can't avoid things, but we can get through them. So hopefully that was helpful. Would love to chat with you. I do free calls just to kind of touch base, see where you're at, how I can help you. Maybe even just give you some insight, to get you going on something that's going to help you do some healing. I do get to the root cause of chronic health conditions. I address the triggers and the traumas. I do lab testing, supplements, nutraceuticals. I do obviously nutrition, functional medicine, holistic approach to healing. So check out my website, and hopefully that was helpful. And I will see you soon.